Hey there, it's Eric on the streets of Belgrade, Serbia once again, and I just wanted to compare this place to Medellin, Colombia, because I just got back from Medellin yesterday, and I flew, within 24 hours I was transplanted from one to the other. So I wanted to tell you what the differences I see are between Medellin and Belgrade, and by extension Latin America and the Balkans. So basically, the number one difference that I feel immediately is safety. There's a much greater vibe of safety here in the Balkans. There's a much greater sense that people are in a society together, and there's a much greater respect that I see for the social being a part of a society and part of a sort of social contract to not do other people wrong. Whereas in Latin America, it's got like a sort of edgy vibe. Medellin, Colombia, formerly one of the most dangerous places in the world. Not that Belgrade didn't have its troubles in the 90s and stuff, but basically I noticed in Belgrade, everybody sort of fits into a social order and a community of people that aren't afraid of each other and work together for the common good. In Colombia, I felt like it's more of a war between different social classes, different political factions, and different sorts of types of people. And that indeed there's a lot more people who will try to rob you and try to take advantage of others. And the society is less evolved in that social sense. Not that I had any problems in Colombia, but you hear a lot more stories about people who do. And you see a lot more people who do look like the people who would rob you. People giving you weird looks, people making strange comments about which neighborhood you're walking in and stuff like that. I mean, there was this one neighborhood in Medellin between the main square and the main farmers market, Minorista, that I walked through, and it was literally people lying on the ground smoking crack. And, people were sizing me up. Can I rob this gringo sort of vibe? Of course, I was super aware and nothing bad happened, and I changed directions when a group of young men were walking towards me. But here there is absolutely no neighborhood like that. In Belgrade, it's perfectly safe to walk any time of night, anywhere basically. And petty crime is not a thing here. So Medellin, crimes of opportunity do happen. And in Belgrade, I think if you're going to get beaten up or murdered by someone, it's going to be because of a crime of passion. You offended their honor or something like that. Because it's a very honor-based society, which is why people aren't interested in dishonorable petty crime if they're going to lose face for it. Next thing, okay, culture. Both of these societies are sort of derivative or offshoots of European civilization. And the biggest difference is this place, Serbia, has its own language, history, and culture, whereas Colombia is actually a former colony of Spain, former colony that's been separated for hundreds of years, speaking a language called Spanish, which they got from the colonizers. Now, I'm sure if you go into the jungle, you will find that, people are still living their own indigenous culture, but in Medellin you feel nothing like that. Nothing at all, because it's all Spanish and it's a very Spanish-only type of place. Whereas in Belgrade, it's more connected to other places. Lots of people speaking English, and they have their own richness of culture and history, and they know who their ancestors were, what kind of lives they lived, and all of the different ways that Serbian culture relates to all the different cultures around. And they pretty much know what's going on in the outside world. They know what's going on in Germany. They know what's going on in, the Americas, France, and just a lot more worldliness and a lot more of its own culture here that is not derived from colonial culture, that it's like a local culture that is local to this region. And so basically, I much prefer that old world culture. The old world identity, the richness of language, the knowledge of other places, of history, and who you are in this world. Because I felt like in Colombia, they were basically just making it up as they're going along with their language, which is, of course, a very beautiful language, Spanish. But It's not really anything that seemed to be being approached with a huge amount of authenticity. Kind of like American English loses a lot of the nuances of British English and the wit and humor as well. So yeah, that takes me to the third thing is the influence of American culture in Colombia is similar to the influence of German culture in Belgrade. It's something that brings structure, stuff, food, ideas, and all that stuff. There's also a huge American influence here in Serbia, but I would say that idea of there's a poorer region that speaks so North America, South America. North America, it's an English-speaking sort of place that views itself as culturally superior to the Latin-speaking regions to the south of it, and have a huge influence on their policy and stuff like that, and that people want to go and live in America. It's very similar to the way that people here in Serbia, or the way that the Central European Germanic cultures influence Serbia, and the way that people in Serbia dream of going to live in Germany or Sweden or something like that. It's the same sort of relationship between Western Europe and Eastern Europe as it is in North America and South America. And you can really see that in the way that the place is run. And the next thing will be food. Okay. The food in Europe is much better. There are some things in Latin America which are excellent. And I would say that the main thing which is excellent is the fruit and anything that grows in the jungle, because it's a very diverse, biodiverse place in Latin America. And yeah, anything that grows in the jungle is great. But in terms of the quality of the cheese, the bread, and everything like that, Europe is the king. And even Serbia has great standards. You know, you can get pizza that's made to the Italian standard. You can get cheese and meat which is made to a high standard like you would find in France. And yeah, it's good to find, in Latin America, good quality Argentinian style steaks. And yeah, but normally the stuff that the people in the supermarkets are eating is junk. And well, you can say the same about a lot of the stuff in the supermarkets here, but what you have also is a fairly ingrained gourmet culture and a fairly active health food culture, which I didn't really find in Latin America. So what else am I missing from this comparison? The women are very beautiful in both places. The genetics of the people are mixed with European genetics and other genetics. So I'd say Serbian people are a lot more white than Colombian people. I guess Colombian people mostly descend from Spanish people, but also the indigenous people of South America and also people from Africa. And it's the mix of the three, whereas Serbia is like really, really thoroughly Central European with a dash of Mediterranean blood, and the tribes of people that were here in the Balkans before, plus the Romani people who descend from India. So basically both places are predominantly European genetics, from my estimation, with different dashes of different stuff based on the history. But the difference is that Colombia has a lot more mixing with indigenous American people, because it's actually their land that they conquered, the Europeans there. So, but the variety of faces and different sort of expressions of genetics that you see in both places is both very fascinating. And in both places, it's kind of weird to see a blonde-haired, blue-eyed sort of guy like me, but it's possible in both places, and it's more common here in Serbia. So, I'm a mix of Central European, German, and Slavic, Eastern European, German, Ukrainian, and Celtic from the British Isles, basically. So that's why I look the way I do. And the mixes that they have in those countries is why they look like the way they do. And it's beautiful. Very interesting diversity in both places of how people look and also how people behave, because in both places you have this, going back to what I said about being derivative of European culture, the European culture is what sort of dominates the place. Here it's a Slavic culture with Germanic and Latin undertones, and there it's a Latin culture, pretty straight up with American undertones. But then you have the chaos, so to speak, of here it's like the sort of Turkish Islamic influence on the society, which adds and the former Ottoman Empire influences, which add, and the Mediterranean stuff, which add like sort of a very interesting counterforce to the sort of orderly Central European Germanic sorts of thinking systems and stuff. And there you have this Spanish system, which is then countered by the whole fact that there's all this tribal indigenous cultures and that it's so separated by hundreds of years from its Spanish roots. Even though Spanish is still the language, in Colombia I found that they're really disconnected from that, and the society's been doing its own thing, which is influenced by all sorts of indigenous sorts of patterns of behavior. So both these societies are on the brink of chaos and order. So which one would I rather live in? It's always going to be Belgrade, because I find it much safer, the food is better, and people are more like me in their culture and history, plus they speak English a lot more. Not that Spanish would be that hard to learn. I was picking up a lot while I was there. But both places are excellent if you want to work remotely or live in a place that has a certain amount of decency and civilization, while also is exciting and exotic, and people in both places are very, very nice. Like extremely nice. Like you can find much nicer than in any Western European or North American place. I mean, they're sincerely nice and curious about foreigners and welcoming and hospitable and all that stuff. So both places are great. I'd say if you want to work on the internet and you want to work for North America, go in South America, and of course if you want to work for Western Europe or the UK, then go here to the Balkans. Now I'm a little jet lagged, that's why I've been so confused and looking so confused and out of breath in this video. I just got back yesterday, but I think it was important to get these impressions on the camera, and thank you for watching. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, either of them, Belgrade Beat or Eric Moot, my other channel, well, now's the time to do that. Thanks a lot. Any questions, comments below, feel free to write them, and that's it, folks. I'll catch you later.